Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Today we're going to be talking about the power of remote, building high-performance organizations that thrive in the virtual workplace. This is Shane Sprague's book, and we're going to be talking to Shane as well. So Shane, tell us where we can find you.
Well, there's two main places. One, of course, you can get the book on Amazon. Then on LinkedIn. I am the only Shane Spragues on LinkedIn. So by all means, look me up and find me there. It's probably the easiest way to contact me and connect with me. And I'd love to have your listeners connect with me there.
So you are unique then, Shane?
That's what Mum told me.
So I've read the book, Shane, great book. What's the inspiration behind it?
Well, it will come as no surprise that it came out in the middle of the pandemic. Cynthia, my co-author, she has had years of experience working as an individual remotely. She actually got her master's in telecommunication in 1993, and so I joined Vertira in 2020, April 2020. You can probably remember that date. And I brought my leadership and management skills and project management background to Vertira, the company she owns, and we combined our skill set. Started working on the book in 2021. As these things do, they took a little longer than expected, and then was finally launched on February 2023, which surprisingly is almost 2 years ago now.
But it's the thing about the book though is it's the first one I've ever read, which is that about saying the future is remote, or whatever leadership is going to be remote, however big or small it is, and how do we do it?
Right, right, and the thing is that looking ahead, I'm always a big believer in what's coming next, and it makes no sense to me that a startup will spend $6,000 a month on an office space and limit themselves to the people in the in the general vicinity, within about an hour's drive, to start their business. Entrepreneurs are smarter than that. They realize that first of all, they're going to save a bunch of money by doing it from their house and bootstrapping their business, and then they're going to hire whoever's most qualified and available from around the globe. Of course, that comes with its own set of challenges if you go too far outside your time zone, but there's benefits to that as well. And so if you just think about it, the next Google, the next Apple, the next Amazon are being built in people's basements right now. And and Apple was actually built out of a garage to begin with. So this is how companies start. And so yes, we have this turmoil right now with companies going back to the office and established businesses flirting with hybrid and whatnot. It just makes sense to me that the future is remote and giving people some flexibility around how they relate to their business and the place of work.
So, what are the essential strategies for building and maintaining high performance when you have a remote environment?
Yeah, I break it down into four key concepts, and the first, very most important one, the biggest one on the list is in being intentional. So we often hear about the water cooler and how companies, this is what they miss when they go remote. There's no organic interactions. We start to peel back what organic really means. It means people have these chance encounters, and they talk about things that weren't planned, but it actually is relying on luck. If your business is growing organically, you're essentially saying, I hope it's going to be successful, right? And so remote businesses require you to be more intentional about all the things you do, so that you can have plans for things like what technology you use, how you communicate, how you innovate. This is a big one, and a lot of small companies that rely on organic stall out because they don't have a plan for innovation. And when you take a step back and say, okay, what are we doing here? What's our plan for this? It's a strategy that's forced on us for remote businesses, but it's actually a really good strategy for every business as well. So that's a big one. The next one that I talk a lot about is relatedness. So relatedness is a way of looking at the relationships between the people at your business. It's slightly below friendship when it comes to how people communicate with each other, and it's a very professional level of relationship. And you have to develop relatedness as a remote business, and that can be done through some very simple means. You're not required to have large Christmas parties or have a pool table. Those things they play lip service to the relationships of the people in your office, but it's absolutely critical.
It's interesting because I've worked for organizations that have had pool tables and table tennis tables, and all it does is that the table tennis people hang around with the table. It doesn't actually create relationships, and it doesn't actually create teams.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly it. And the key thing about that is that what I find is that when you think about culture in a business, most in-office businesses rely on social for their culture, and those form in small, tiny little pockets. And so the culture you have as your business is actually quite fragile if the wrong person leaves or the wrong bad apple joins your business. And for a remote business, your culture needs to be anchored on the purpose of your business, the values of your company, and the values need to be stronger than integrity or how
Yeah,
success. We have to be something that people can use as a way of making decisions on, right? So we had one at Vertier that I really liked called um, "Say No to Fire Drills," right? So I know what that means. I can recite it to somebody who happens to come to me with in a non-urgent issue that it needs to be dealt with right away. Well, is this a fire drill? We don't say yes to fire drills here. We say no to fire drills. But you can also use that during employee reviews. Hey, and I've noticed you quite often say have a lot of fire drills going on. Just to remind you, company value is to say no to those, and so on and so forth. So it's an important thing for people to remember. And so getting back to relatedness, the relatedness is something that forms between people who work together and they have conversations that are slightly above small talk. So small talk is usually, hey, how was your weekend? What sort of what's the weather like in your neighborhood? And so you can relatedness forms with people who work together on common projects, and within a business you can do a bit more work by having icebreakers at the start of large meetings. These don't have to happen all the time, but you can ask simple questions like, what's a smell that reminds you of your childhood? It gets people talking at a level
I like the
above it.
question. Yeah,
Yeah, and so these things are there, and then there's also some team building events you can do remotely that we've got a list of things you can of really well thought out remote team building events. But the central theme there is they has to be facilitated. So you have to have someone or a computer has to take responsibility for making sure that people are talking. So so relatedness is a real big one. The next one is communication. You have to put a lot of time and effort into communication and really understand how you're talking to everyone up, down, and laterally. And you have to again have an intentional plan
it's
for
the
that.
intentional bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's the word, which is you have to be. I run a remote organization, and you have to be intentional in I go to all of the people and make sure that they know about something, and be intentional about it.
yeah, yeah, and absolutely, and that plays into the last important key word is transparency. You
Yeah,
need to be have a level of transparency so that somebody who is working on their own can make decisions and has the opportunity and the intention to be able to do that, and then that they can contribute in a very transparent way to the work they're doing to others, and so people can see what they're doing. They don't fall into silos, and so those things working together just build good management. They build good executive, strengths and strategy, and they help people thrive.
yeah. I yeah, we actually well, I decided to when you talked about having organized meetings, we've done that. I actually organized a meeting where we had no agenda. This was during COVID,
Hmm.
where I just said that the salespeople hated it because, well, what's the point of the meeting? The point of the meeting is just to get together.
Yeah.
Let's just get together and have a chat. like we were at a water cooler, or we did sort of like walk into the kitchen or something like that, that sort of thing. And not having an agenda actually freed up the conversation. Whereas even that would be, can I talk to you later about that? Yeah, okay. And there was someone would tell a joke, whatever. But because it was a business, we were on work time. The conversation was always business related.
Right.
It wouldn't go to something completely different. People did realize that and respect the fact that we were on a work time.
And that's an important point there. I find that people in remote businesses really have a real sense of, I'm at work.
Yeah.
I want, and I feel that most people naturally want to do good work. And if you start with that in mind, and you establish the environment where they do good work, then they can be successful. You will naturally be successful by proxy as well, right? So it is about creating the right environment. And where people fail is their management layer isn't strong enough to keep people busy. If you think about really basically what a manager is, it's their job is to give tasks to people, or delegate the work. Executives, teams figure out what to do. They tell the managers to break it down. Managers say, okay, here team, here's what I need you to do. And if they do a poor job of that, people are left at home saying, I've got nothing to do. And then oftentimes they are sometimes penalized for being innovative or taking their own initiative, and that's where things start to fall apart. In the office, people walk around and managers say, hey, you're busy? No? Well, here's something you can do, right? And if you just can't do that remotely.
So what? How does leadership in a remote organization differ?
Well, they have to really understand the purpose of the work that's being done, and everything has to be tracked back to the intentions of the business. So why are we in business, and then why and what projects are we doing, what work are we doing to facilitate that work, that purpose, sorry, and then how do you communicate that work, that purpose, to people. And that is really where a leadership role, it's distilled down into its basics. Their job is to communicate the purpose of the business, the purpose of these projects, so that everybody knows that the task, how the task that they are doing connects back up to the mission or vision of the business. And they have to stay on top of that. And it's just, they have to be far more involved in the what I tend to look at as the priorities of the business. So I know there's a lot of different approaches to strategy, the OKRs and goals, opportunities, and whatnot. I'm a big believer in having a list of priorities. So what are the most important things, and what's most important, and what's out of those five, what's the top, what's the bottom. And their job is to stay on top of it and make sure that it's well communicated, and have a forward looking perspective on things, looking at the marketplace and who their competition is, and actually getting down to the work of doing the real work, which oftentimes executives don't do in office businesses.
So how? And then this same question, but for when you've got individual contributors, how do they work? Because quite often they'll be working within teams or cross departments, and then you're kind of in this endless loop of, I'm just going to be on Zoom or Teams calls all day.
Yeah, well, it does take some time to effort on someone's part. Again, a manager's job or a project manager's job to facilitate people's time. Having better meetings is very important. We ran a survey. Less a survey, more a research project at the start of the pandemic. We were curious about camera usage. At this very start, there was a lot of consternation around cameras, and we ran the same report again in 2023, and we actually talked to 1,500 different people across 12 different industries and 15 different time zones. And what we found was that really it's not a camera issue, it's a meeting issue. That people are not experiencing Zoom burnout, they're experiencing meeting burnout. And there's a number of different ways to reduce your meetings, because they can be a time sink. One of the key ones is to teach facilitation at your place of work. Always blows my mind that companies will not invest in a little bit of training just to make sure everyone knows how to facilitate a meeting. It's a learned skill. and people need to know how to interrupt people, and need to know how to organize a meeting, need to know how to call on people to get their feedback, because quite often the best feedback comes from people who don't want to talk in a meeting, and how to make sure those meetings are successful when you have them, but also to reduce meetings that so like a lot of companies will just have repeatable meetings on a weekly basis, with you just get together and they just talk, and there's no strategy to it. um, Shopify had I'm sure you remember, back in 2023 at the start of the year, they canceled every single one of their meetings, and it freed up about 72,000
There's
hours.
also certain companies that have like no meeting Friday and stuff like
Yeah, yeah, we do that as well. But this really shone a light on the fact that there are a lot of meetings that are just set up because people think they need them, and
that.
if you think about it, an hour-long meeting between 8 people will cost the company $20,000 a year if it's held weekly. And so either reducing the size of that, or canceling them altogether when they're not needed, it is an important thing for people to keep an eye out for. So um, so getting a handle on your meetings are very important. Not everyone has to be at every meeting. We do more upfront work if you really think about how you collaborate and strategize. And I'm the type of person who I might get into a brainstorming meeting, and I like to have a foil. I like to talk to somebody, but I end up doing a lot of the talking, and they just sit there listening to me. Now, did they need to be part of that meeting? Could I find a way to do that brainstorming myself and bring information to that meeting that is prepared and therefore more productive and valuable to the conversation? So do more upfront work on before the meetings, and do your best to reduce the size of and the number of pointless, useless meetings, and give people time to focus, because that's really the key charm of remote work.
So in the final 3 minutes, what about the future? AI you know is in every single conversation. What is it that we can be doing with remote work around AI, and what is the future?
Well, I think the trend is, we're seeing a lot of the companies that went remote during the pandemic having some form of coming back to the office, and that's because they were centered in a location and they had people around that area. But most of them have some sense of flexibility, either 1 to 4 days a week where you can work with out of the office. And companies need to get better at running a remote team. The last survey was 55% of people want to work remotely full time, and only 5% of people want to work in the office full time. So we know that's where people are going, and we know also that remote jobs are a premium right now. If people will get the return to the office mandate, and they'll quit, and then they go find a job that they can do even at a lesser pay. It's something people want, and I think it's bringing us to a better concept of work-life balance, where we focus our efforts during the day with better work habits, and then we have time after outside the office for us to be productive and have that social time that we need and crave, but with the people we want to have it with, not the people we're forced to have it with at the office. And in the middle of all that, they save on commuting costs, and lunch costs, and all the other costs that go into going to the office every day. So as I started that, I said, that it doesn't make any sense to me that a company would start a business in the office these days. So really, it's just, we're at this real inflection point where the companies that were in the office are dealing with it right now, and we're slowly going to see a transition to more and more remote work businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting what's going on in London at the moment, with the push and pull between offices and remote. Clearly there's a lot of companies that took out a lot of office space before COVID.
Yeah.
And then they're paying for it. Therefore, they're suggesting that people go back to the office.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things where it's been proven that you can work remotely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And part of it is, what one of my friends who works for a bank, even though he's 35, but he likes sitting in his office and being able to look around his terminal and go, "Where's Steve? Oh, he's taken a 2-hour lunch break. I don't, and that he's used to that sort of
Yeah.
of way of working, which is we laugh because it's actually quite old fashioned, but it's still pretty prevalent in terms of that's why people want people to come in the office.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it really, from my, I know there's a lot of conversation around, what's driving the remote to work, the RTO, return to the office mandate. For me, it's simple. It's a management problem.
Yes.
People need to have good managers. We didn't have good managers before the pandemic, and we still have very poor managers. And and they're the ones who make things happen. They have more work to do these days. They have to not only delegate the work, but to keep track of it. And when they do that well, companies thrive. Uh,
Mm.
and you can imagine a large company like Amazon or Apple probably didn't have a lot of good managers. They had some good managers, but they had a lot of good employees they turned into managers who just didn't have the skill set for it and did a lot manage off the side of their desk, and that's how they survived. And so you probably find that we'll have fewer managers, but fewer really good managers in the future.
Shane, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, The Power of Remote: Building High-Performing Organizations That Thrive in a Virtual Work Place. Which, and as I said at the beginning, it's a really good framework in terms of understanding how to lead and manage people within a remote environment. If I wanted to buy a copy, where can I get one from?
We have it on. It's available on Amazon, and if you prefer to listen to it, there's an audio version on Audible. And then we found out a few months ago that's also on Spotify. So it just happens, if you have a premium account there, you can listen to it for free, so to speak.
Excellent. And Shane, where can we find you? The unique Shane Spraggs.
I'm the only Shane Spraggs on LinkedIn. So by all means, look me up, and I would love to connect with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's an amazing subject, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about